Thanks again, Ray Otis, and back here at the RBC Center, second intermission. It's time for Kaiton's Corner. It's time to answer another email question or two, and if you've got a good question for me, this is your place to do so. Just log on to CarolinaHurricanes.com, click on the Kaiton's Corner icon in the multimedia section of send me an email straight out to Chuck K at CarolinaHurricanes.com. That's Chuck and the letter K at CarolinaHurricanes.com. Provide us with your full name, where you're emailing from, and any good question about hockey, and we'll answer it for you on a future second intermission. That's Chuck K at CarolinaHurricanes.com with your full name and where you're emailing from, just as Christina Jewson did of Garner, North Carolina. And Christina, thank you very much for your participation. She says, I'm confused about what was going on toward the end of the second period of the Hurricanes-Blue Jackets game last Friday night. Could you explain briefly any of the new rules for fighting penalties, if there are any? Thank you very much, and go Canes. Well, Christina, I echo your sentiments about some of the rule changes and some of the things that have happened. And briefly to explain the fighting situation, if a fight breaks out on the ice, and I'll tell you, that game was reminiscent, and I think I mentioned this on the air, of 20 or 25 years ago when we used to see this summarily in preseason games, because players would literally fight for jobs and try to make impressions with their coaches and general managers to stay, as was the case for Hitchcock's Blue Jacket team. They had a number of young kids in there. Jared Bull was stirring it up, and Glenn Cross, and a couple of these other players, Brookbank. And what you have in a situation like this is when a fight develops, that player will get a 5-minute major. All right, if a secondary altercation breaks out, those players will get 5-minute fighting majors and 10-minute misconducts. And if another fight breaks out, those players will get 5 and game misconducts, which happened to Dennis Seidenberg, I think, on that play. So basically, they discourage multiple fights at the same time. So you have a situation, and if you pick up a game misconduct, you get 2 of those, and the third one nets you a 1-game suspension. So, and it's a cumulative thing when you pick up a game misconduct, whether it's for fighting or for high sticking or hitting from behind. In this case, you talk about the fighting situation, Christina. Basically, you cannot have a secondary or tertiary altercation at the same time that the first one's going on. So that's basically the fighting rule. There's also another rule that stipulates that if a player is deemed an instigator, he will get an extra 2-minute penalty. In other words, if he blatantly, in the official's opinion, starts the fight, if either verbally or if it's not mutual consent, in the referee's opinion, if he sees one player being the instigator, he will get an extra 2-minute penalty, the 5 minutes for fighting, and a automatic game misconduct. Now, there is another term in there when it comes to fighting, and that is the aggressor. And that is when, and this is something we didn't see the other night, and it could have been called, when Scott Walker was battling it out with Ron Hainsey. He was hammering away on him and had Hainsey in a very vulnerable position. Well, the rule book clearly dictates that Scott Walker could have picked up a game misconduct for being the aggressor. And that simply means, and I don't want to get bogged down in all of these terms, because I don't think we're going to see very many fights this year that will have this aggressor, but you never know. There may be something in the water this year where the pendulum swings the other way, and we may have more in terms of fistic activity in NHL games. While everybody says fighting is being phased out by the players, it's the players who certainly dictate that phasing in or phasing out process, and maybe we're going to be in a cycle of phasing in. So anyway, there is now what is called an aggressor penalty, that if you are clearly the winner of a fight, and you would have just picked up a 5-minute major, if you keep throwing the dukes, you could be termed the aggressor and also get a game misconduct. So the referees have that at their discretion as well. They also have the discretion of waiving a 10-minute misconduct if they have made a mistake about a secondary altercation. So it may sound very, very confusing, Christina, but that's just the way the rule book reads. And to see it in action, the players, or actually the officials, have quite a latitude in which they can call game misconducts or 10-minute misconducts. And let's not forget the differentiation between the two. If you pick up a 10-minute misconduct, you get a monetary fine, but you stay in the game after you serve the 10 minutes. If you get a game misconduct, you are ejected, and 3 of those game misconducts nets you a 1-game suspension, and it is cumulative from then on. If you get a 4th game misconduct in a season, you get a 2-game suspension, and it arithmetically increases from there. So thanks, Christina Jewson of Garner, for your question tonight in Kaiton's Corner, we'll do it again tomorrow night. Hurricanes start a 4-game road trip in Washington tomorrow night. Big key divisional game, and we'll have another edition of Kaiton's Corner then. Just send your question along to Chuck K at CarolinaHurricanes.com. That's Chuck and the letter K at CarolinaHurricanes.com. Give us your full name, where you're emailing from, and a good question about hockey, and we'll answer it for you on this segment of our broadcast in Kaiton's Corner. I'm Chuck Kaiton.